Hi guys, welcome back. So today's episode I'm going to be talking about farmer tax in South Africa. This is quite a hot topic at the moment. There's a lot of talk about it in Parliament. There was a protest action about it a few weeks ago. Various political actors are giving their opinions, trying to diminish or ramp up the issue of farmer tax depending on their outlook. And so I thought, you know what, I'm a farmer here in South Africa. I live on a small farm that I've lived on my whole life. I do some small scale farming. I have my farming channel over here. You can have a look. Please, if you're interested in farming, give it a look, give it a like. But in terms of South African farmer tax, let me give you my perspective from the perspective of a farmer who, I won't say deals with this issue, I'll speak about that a little bit later, but who is very conscious of this issue on a daily basis. So let's just start out for any international viewers. What are farmer tax? Like, we've heard about this thing, farmer tax in South Africa. What is the issue? What is going on in South Africa? So basically, let me give you an introduction of the narrative that's been put out there. In South Africa, because of our culture and our history, farming is a very big part of the Afrikaner and also the English Rhodesian culture. So a lot of farms are owned by people from Afrikaner, Boer heritage, or from English Rhodesian heritage like myself. As such, a lot of the farms are essentially owned by white people, and the ownership of farms by white people has been a contentious issue throughout our political history, in terms of the struggle against apartheid and the fighting in Rhodesia, the Chimurenga Bush War. This has been a central pillar of that struggle for a long time. I won't go back all the way into the beginning, but even in the 1800s, the first conflicts between the Zulu kingdom and Boer farmers or burghers, these took place in very rural settings. So farmer tax in South Africa have a rich political history and go back a long way. This is why the farmer tax issue is framed in the way it is, as opposed to simply just being an aspect of crime. So basically there's two schools of thought in South African or Southern African farmer tax. The first school of thought is the one put out there, purported by the ANC or the EFF, which are the radical leftist political parties in South Africa. So they claim that there is no such thing as a farmer tax, that when farmers are murdered on their farms or they assaulted or whatever, it's just ordinary crime, same as people are murdered in the suburbs or in the cities, in the townships. They're assaulted in the townships, so it's just basically normal crime in a rural setting. There's no political aspect to it. It's just a case of armed robbery, and because the victims are very often isolated, the attackers will take out any sadistic desires they may have on the victims, because it's a long way for help, whereas in the suburbs they'll just attack, get in, out, take the stuff and leave. So that's the narrative, or the sort of economic narrative, where farmer tax are seen as just economic crime. It's just an armed robbery that takes place, and it's the same as any other armed robbery that may happen in the suburbs. This just happens to be on a farm. And the reason they use this narrative, or the reason, the proof of this narrative, is that very often that is the case. When farm attacks happen, there's a theft that occurs. So the people will come in and attack the farmers, attack the farmers' family, farm workers, and the reason they're doing that is they are after something to steal. So they want to steal firearms, they want to steal cars, they want to steal TVs, they want to steal whatever's in the farmer's safe. It's just basically armed robbery. They're there to get what material they can, what wealth they can in terms of a robbery, and it's the same thing that happens in the suburbs. So that's the economic school of thought. That's the school of thought that the government says, and that's the school of thought that the EFF says. So they also say that there's no such thing as a farm attack because farm workers are often attacked. Sometimes murders on farms are as a result of like a domestic dispute. Farmers will kill his wife. Does that count as a farm attack? A wife will hire a hitman to kill her husband for the insurance money, and her husband's a rich farmer. Does that count as a farm attack? So they use all of these little things to dilute the issue of farm attacks and make it seem as if farmers want special attention when everybody, regardless of where they stay, is subject to the same kind of violence and brutal armed robbery style attacks. So there's nothing special about farmers. They get attacked same as everybody else. Farm workers get attacked, people in the townships get attacked. Armed robbery is unfortunately a part of South African life. So why should the farmers get any special attention? That's the economic school of thought. The second school of thought is the school of thought put forward by Afrikaner organizations like the Freedom Front or AfriForum, those style organizations, even the DA, is that the political school of thought, that these attacks are not just economic crime, they are in fact political attacks carried out for the purpose of creating fear in the farming community, the white farming community, and then the whites will eventually say, you know what, it's too scary to live on the farms waiting for someone to attack you, we need to leave the land. So that was the case in Rhodesia, which I'll get to, was the attacks had the purpose of driving the farmers off the land. So it fulfilled a political objective. It was part of armed struggle. The reason people like the Freedom Front and that say that these attacks are politically motivated is often the very sadistic torture, basically, and treatment that victims of farm attacks suffer that goes out of all proportion or doesn't fulfill the need of an economic crime. So basically, if you are there to rob the farmer, steal his guns, steal his car, steal his TV and that, why did you have to murder the whole family? Why did you burn them with boiling water? Why did you torture them with iron? Why did you commit rape? Why were all these really sadistic actions inflicted on the farmers and their families if it's a simple economic crime? If you can get in and out and just steal the stuff and leave the farmer living, why did you kill him? Because unfortunately, that's the truth, is many of these farm attacks exceed by far the needs of ordinary economic crime. The violence involved goes to another level. In other words, we've all seen muggings and stuff, videos of muggings, but this is like a whole nother level of violence. The level of violence, why is that happening? Why are these people committing such extreme acts of violence against the farmers if they're just ordinary victims of economic crime? So that's what the Freedom Front and other organizations, why they classify farm attacks as political crimes, or as politically motivated crimes. So what is my perspective? Well, I look into history. Generally, when I want to find something else, I look into history and I do the historical research. My perspective is that in many ways this is a political attack, because the history of farm attacks, modern Southern African farm attacks, begins in December 1972, when the first farm attack happened in Rhodesia. This was 100% politically motivated. It was carried out by Rex Nyong'o, who later became a commander in the Zimbabwean army. And the stated purpose of these Rhodesian farm attacks was to drive the Rhodesian farmers from the land. That was the stated purpose. They would come in at night, armed ZANA militants, and they would attack isolated farmsteads with automatic weapons and RPGs, mortars, the normal communist insurgent-style weapons. And if they could get to a farmer, they would kill the farmer in the most sadistic way possible in order to spread terror. You know, they would bayonet farmers' babies, they would kill missionaries, all these kinds of classical Maoist, communist, terror style attacks. You know, so if you've read guerrilla warfare and that, you'll know that it's I won't say an accepted part, but it's a normal part of guerrilla warfare. And these Rhodesian farm attacks escalated from 1972 up all the way up into the 1980s, the end of Rhodesia, but even post Rhodesian Zimbabwean independence in the Kurahunde in Matabele land, the Zanla dissidents would also attack white farmers. So this attack on white farmers to drive them off the land and to make a political statement by the extreme brutality of the attack has been central to farm attacks in Rhodesia and Zimbabwe, and then that later sort of mutated into South Africa because the UPLA, which was the armed wing of the PAC, and the MK of the ANC, they also started to carry out farm attacks with the same 100% political motives. So basically, a politically motivated farm attack is the following. Heavily armed attackers, basically heavy armed attackers will break into a farm, generally at night, or when during the day, it doesn't actually matter. And they will attack the farmer and his family and potentially farm workers, overwhelm them with their heavy weaponry, and then often kill the farmer and his family, and often proceed that killing by torture, at which point, after the farmer's dead, they will generally load up whatever valuable possessions they can find, steal, often into the farmer's car, and then they will flee the scene. So that's basically what a farm attack looks like. And that's what we mean when people in South Africa talk about farm attacks. They talk about these outsiders, heavily armed robbers, or whatever you want to call them, insurgents, depending on your outlook. They will commit this crime on the farm, which is generally often murder is the central and most serious crime that they will commit, but there'll be a host of other crimes. They may assault people, they'll obviously steal stuff, they may set buildings on fire. So, you know, there's a lot of crimes that could be committed in the course of a farm attack. So what is my perspective as a farmer? You know, obviously from this video you've heard some of the things I've been saying. So what is my perspective? Well, my perspective is that these attacks are actually, although they're economic crimes in motivation, they are political attacks in many instances. And let me explain why. During the armed struggle against apartheid, limpet mines, planting limpet mines or bombs, terrorist bombings were an accepted part of guerrilla warfare. They were very much openly part of the ANC strategy, as were necklacings in the townships, as were laying landmines, and as were farm attacks. You know, the ANC Youth League, former Youth League president, was very famous for singing a song called "Kill the Boer, Kill the Farmer." So all of these guerrilla-style attacks were part of the armed struggle. But in 1994, when peace came and when South Africa supposedly got put together and everyone was supposed to get along, the terrorist bombing stopped, the landmines stopped, the necklacing stopped, but the farm attacks continued. Why is that? Well, it's because farm attacks are still very much in the interests of the ANC government and of other left-wing parties. You see, it's not in their interest to plant landmines anymore because the international community will be outraged. It's not in their interest to put a limpet mine inside a restaurant and blow it up because it doesn't serve their interest. But it is still in their interests, the way they see it, to drive white farmers from the land, because when all the white farmers are gone, then they can just take over the land. They don't have to worry about compensation. They don't have to worry about looking bad in front of the international community. it's just a case of driving them from the land. So there's very much still a political motivation behind the continuation of farm attacks. And that's why the ANC will often downplay farm attacks, because although they don't want to be called out, and although you can't prove that they physically condone or back the attacks, they want the attacks to continue because it serves their interests of driving white farmers from the land. And so that's why in this country it's such a contentious issue, because the ANC can deny and they can try and downplay it and say no, it's just crime, but the point is this happened as part of the armed struggle, and the other parts of the armed struggle stopped. Why did farm attacks continue? Because you want them to continue, because you have an interest in them continuing, and because you actually the ANC has a personal hatred towards white farmers, and they want to drive them off the land. That's why they do everything they can to make sure that farm attacks can continue. So we used to have a commando system where the farmers could join together in like a commando unit and then protect each other. The ANC did everything in their power and they abolished that commando system so that it's harder to combat farm attacks. Our police minister has stated that it's his goal to disarm all civilians and take all their guns away. So the farm attackers, obviously they're criminals, they're going to still have guns. Most of those guns are illegal anyway. But the farmers will not be able to defend themselves. This is the goal of the ANC government, to make the farmers defenseless and then to use farm attacks as a proxy for driving them off the land. That's my perspective as a farmer, and that's what basically the reality I've lived with my whole life, because this has always been an aspect of farm life. There's always been this uncertainty, this insecurity, and when I think of a potential farm attack, I think of outside attackers coming in because they're of the opinion that I'm their enemy, their political enemy. Because I haven't done anything to anyone personally. I always try and respect people, treat them with respect. I don't have a huge amount of money. So if I'm the victim of a farm attack, it's because someone looked at me and they said that man is my political enemy. So that's my perspective. Sorry if this video dragged on a bit. I will make some more videos in the future dealing with farm attacks, part 2, how to deal with farm attacks, what to do, those kinds of things. But this is part 1, and this is just my perspective on South African farm attacks. Guys, if you like this video, please hit the like button, please subscribe to my channel, and I'll see you on the next one. Be safe out there. Cheers.